Who's got the biggest green lens? Intermediate braking, we've got 4.5. Yeah, no, I wasn't.
Right, so this is the David Lloyd George. It's coming back together, as you can see. The boiler has been returned from Israel Newton's, where they did a lot of work to do the 10-year examination. So that involved taking all the tubes out. It also involved restaying most of the firebox, because we've had some trouble with broken stays that kept causing us trouble. So we decided to restay it entirely. Now that meant that, particularly with the crown stays, they were the plate that the stays were welded into was not good. The outer wrapper plate, which is this bit up here of the boiler. So if I, oh no, I'm not, yes, I don't know if you can see under the cladding there, there's a bit of boiler there. Anyway, so to get access and to replace the plate, they cut out all the top in a big section where the direct stays go from the outer wrapper to the inner fireboxes. Because as I say, the plate on the outside was damaged where it had been welded, and because we replaced some of the crown stays in time. Since the boiler was built in '91, we replaced quite a few crown stays. So the plate where they'd been re-welded in was damaged and not good. So anyway, so they cut the whole lot out, put new crown stays in. They've also put new fusible plug bosses in. And also they've replaced a lot of the stays, like that one there, in the sides and in the throat plates, which is this plate on the end. So the new stays are welded in with a different method. The weld that you can see around this stay is all that's holding it in. It's not been dug into the plate at all, it's just on the surface. Now that's a design that's come from the continent, Germany notably. People call them Deutsche stays. So it's a welded stay, so it's a piece of round bar that goes through the outer plate, through the water space to the inner plate. It's just welded around the outside, either TIG welded or MIG welded. You'll see the end of this there's no opening, there's no telltale. That's because the telltales are all going to the inner firebox, and that's deliberate, so that if a stay does break, now we'll see the steam and water leaking in the firebox rather than leaking under the cladding, and we start wondering, well, you know, is it leaking here, is it leaking here, you know, if there's steam coming out of here. So I say that telltale hole goes right the way through, from just short of this surface here, right the way through, and it's open on the inner firebox plate. And basically that's designed to tell you if the stay is cracked. And you have to have that with a welded stay. You don't need to have it if it's a screwed stay. We could have put screwed stays in, but as this boiler was built all welded, for consistency we've used this new welded design, and hopefully it'll prove more reliable. We won't have as many broken stays, we won't have any, you know, well, hopefully it'll now, the loco will run for 10 years without boiler problems. Anyway, say Israel Newton's in Cromford did all this work. They've put new tubes in, they've done all the welding of the stays. They've hydraulic tested it. The boiler was bare at Newton's in Matlock. When they did that, our boiler inspector witnessed the hydraulic test. So that's basically a cold water test, 1.5 times the working pressure. We did the steam test here yesterday, and that went well. There was no leaks. Say this, the smoke boxes are already back on. One other little modification that Israel Newtons did for us was to add this bit here, which is a soot sump. So at the front tube plate, we've got a problem where ash and char collected and rotted and damaged the bottom of the tube plate. So now we've got this little sump that lines up with the bottom of the smoke box, so that the crews can clean it out more easily and the ash won't lie against the bottom of the tube plate, and hopefully that will give the boiler a bit more life. So anyway, basically now the loco's being reassembled. You can see obviously the boiler's in the cradle frame, but it's just on ambulance bogies at the moment. The power bogies are in good condition. They might need a bit of minor work, but basically we'll put all the engine together and then it'll go back on its power bogies. You can see there's one ash pan on the bottom end firebox there. That ash pan's been repaired here whilst the boiler was away, and that's been put back on. The other ash pan is being repaired at the moment and rebuilt in stainless steel, and that'll go on probably shortly when it's ready. And then there's piping to go back on, tanks to go back on. Yeah, so these are the what would have been the well tanks at one time, but they're now basically covers that look like well tanks. So basically the crew stand here, and the paintwork is on this bottom side here. So they're effectively decorative covers, but this is the fireman's side. You can see these are the fire door damper controls. That's the driver's side with the pipes coming up for the brake ejector, and the train pipe going on. Vacuum train pipe goes on through the tank. So they've just had a coat of paint inside to help protect them against corrosion, but they'll go back on the engine shortly. So there's another wagon of DLG bits here. These are the main water tanks. Again, the backs of the tanks have been painted just to give them a corrosion protection. But we're not repainting the front of the tanks because the paintwork is in pretty good order. So there's four side tanks for the loco in here, as you can see. Again, it's a South African B wagon, which is I say ideal for storing parts of locos that are out of use. Right, here are the two power bogies for the David Lloyd George. As I say, they're in pretty good order. They don't need a full mechanical overhaul. I think they've had a clean up and check over, so they'll be basically they're good to go back under the engine, but say that'll be at a much later stage of reassembly. We're going to finish off the upper part of the loco completely, and then it'll be put back on these power bogies. Here's the steam chest of the loco. Live steam enters from a flexible pipe assembly that will be fitted around here. The exhaust comes up here and exhausts through and then into the blast pipe assembly in the bottom of the smoke box. So this ball joint enables the bogie to turn from side to side under the loco, and it's sealed with a PTFE ring in the bottom there, and this ring is trapped by springs so that it's got a bit of give, but it still seals under the lower pressure of the exhaust from the engine. So the high pressure steam comes from the bottom of the smoke box out to the superheater header to the bottom of the smoke box, and then it loops around the axle and into the steam chest there. So, as I say, these bogies are in good condition. They're relatively new. I think we built these bogies in 2014 to essentially the Victorian design, but with improvements. But they're basically in good condition. They go back into the engine, and it'll run happily for, say, hopefully 10 years in total. But obviously the bogies will come out perhaps in 2 years' time for an overhaul, something like that, for wheel turning. There's always some mechanical work. Depends on the amount of mileage that the loco does.
So, come into the paint shop. Wall's obviously been talking about the boiler and everything in the erecting shop, but we're also doing some repairs to the paintwork, and we're going to give it a revarnish, fresh coat of the soup colour on the front here, but the rest of it's just going to have touch-ups and varnishing. We've also got the boiler unit itself needs to be coated up, all the boiler sheets, and Alison's going to do that in the next few days. And we've got the domes in here, which have had to have the flaring on the bottom have been trimmed off to allow the domes to fit, or the dome covers to fit over the increased coal capacity greedy boards. So they're having a full repaint as well. But we won't touch the tanks until they've been bolted back to the superstructure and the whole thing's been reassembled, and at that point we'll give it a clean on those tanks and a few coats of varnish and what we need to do to make it look good for the next 10 years. Cat. So that's a sign writer's thing, and 8 years ago, myself and Andy Williamson lined this locomotive, and Andy put his little cat logo in and our initials, and just under here there was a date, but it's faded out now. Alison's repainted the inside of the cab in stone, but she didn't want to paint over that, so that's staying for another 8-10 years or whatever it lasts.